Welcome to the channel. Today we're going to look at charging and a battery rundown test of the Razer Edge handheld, which has been in kind of the emulation news recently because there have been some good deals on buying these on Newegg and Amazon. So we've been looking at it here on the channel, and we're going to start off by looking at the charging behavior of the Razer Edge. You might say, why is that interesting? Well, charging it, how fast it charges, depends on whether or not you have the controller attached. And then we're going to look at the results of a battery rundown test, because you might notice my battery is pretty run down now. I just finished doing the test, so we will see the results as well. Let's get started. Let's look at the charging behavior of the Razer Edge. So I have here a USB meter so we can see what rate the handheld's charging at. I've got the handheld hooked to the charger, and let's kind of manipulate things around so we can see what's going on. And I've got this plugged into a 65 watt charger, and let's plug in and see what sort of charging we're going to get here. So this is a very low charge level, 7% right now, so we should be getting some of the fastest charging at this point in the charge cycle. And if you look down here, you'll notice that through the controller, the Edge is drawing roughly 15 watts. So you get 15 watt charging maximum if you are using, or charging rather, the Edge through the controller. Now, let's unplug here and take a look at what happens if we plug in the Edge without the controller. So plugging in the Edge handheld itself, let's see what we get. So one thing you'll notice here is, if you can read the numbers down there, you get substantially quicker charging here. You get 25 watt charging if you are charging the Edge without the controller attached. So one thing you should remember, if you're charging up your Edge, if you want it to charge quicker, take the controller off, plug your controller in directly, because you can get 25 watt fast charging here. By the way, 25 watts is the same as the Odin 2 handhelds will also draw. Measured that with the Odin 2 battery test video. But so that means this will charge up at this rate probably a little over an hour. We got a 5,000 milliamp hour battery in here, actually just the same size as the Odin 2 Mini. So definitely, if you want to charge quick, take the controller off, and that's that. Let's take a look at the battery drain tests now that we're going to let our Edge charge up a bit. So let's take a look at the test parameters first. So we have our Edge quietly charging over here in the corner. So just as kind of a reminder here, this test is actually done the same way that I did the test on the Odin 2. So what I did was I booted up Champions of Norath and went to the opening titles. And I've had people ask me, why do you use the opening titles of Champions of Norath? Well, because Champions of Norath is a Snowblind Engine game. Snowblind Engine games are notoriously hard on emulators. So this is and basically the title screen of Champions of Norath is a gigantic rotating 3D scene, which puts these emulators through a pretty good workout. And in fact, the battery runs down on this opening scene in Champions of Norath a lot quicker than it runs down on a lot of actual games during gameplay. So, and plus this is easy to reproduce. So I like to use this as a benchmark because I can do it readily and it gives the devices a pretty good workout. So emulator, Nether SX2 4248 version, which seems to work better for some of the harder to emulate games than the classic version. We're using 3x native resolution, so native for 1080p, and no speed hacks. So basically default emulator settings. I believe Vulkan was the graphics engine we're using here, and 3x resolution. That's pretty much the only thing we did to the emulator settings. By the way, the Edge, at least for the opening titles of Champions of Norath, the Edge will run this at 60 frames per second. So it's running at full speed. Of course, it will run into problems later in the game because pretty much all handhelds, all Android handhelds die in a part of Champions of Norath because of emulator bugs. But at least for the beginning, it'll run this thing 3x resolution, 60 frames per second. Now, system settings. Wi-Fi on, Bluetooth off. This is how I usually test. Now, I don't have any other settings in the Edge that actually toggle. They're pretty much, for what's called a gamer's handheld here, there really aren't all that many settings that we can toggle. It just kind of is what it is. So, Wi-Fi on, Bluetooth off. And for the screen, I turned off adaptive brightness. I actually usually have it on because I like the way it works. I don't have to fiddle with screen brightness when I move from one room to the other. But for the purpose of the test, 65% brightness, adaptive brightness is off, so it doesn't change brightness during the test. And you do actually have an adjustable screen refresh for the Edge, and I use 60 Hertz here, which is appropriate for PlayStation 2 games anyway. So 60 Hertz, basically the low refresh rate here on the Razer Edge. And the controller, it's not attached right now, but during the test it was attached because that's how you would actually play the darn thing most of the time. And the reason that's significant is the controller actually has a drain on the battery. So with the controller attached, the system will use battery faster than if it wasn't attached. Now, let's get to the results. So here is the drain graph here. If you want to do some math, I have the linear fit to this. You can see the percentage loss is mostly linear here, little curvature, but I'm going to assume that the battery drain, at least on your percentage graph, is linear. And you'll notice that, of course, it's a fairly rapid drain here. And if you actually do the math and calculate the expected battery life based on the data, I let it run down to about 11% before I stop the test down here. But if we look at the results, one thing we will certainly notice if you actually are trying this yourself, you'll notice that you get heavy fan usage for this game. This game is really taxing the Snapdragon G3X Gen 1 that's in here. So you see heavy fan usage when you're running Champions of Norath. Basically, it's on full blast pretty much the whole time. Running 60 frames per second, that fan is on. Now, of course, the controller uses battery, so if I took the controller off, I would expect to get some more runtime. The Edge's battery is 5,000 milliamp hours, not the hugest battery in the world, and based on the linear fit for the 130 minutes of data that I took, the estimated battery life for running this part of Champions of Norath would be 2 hours and 28 minutes on these settings. So not the most impressive battery life in the world. Still beats out the Ally, but this is actually a pretty challenging thing for this device to emulate. The Odin 2 Mini has a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, which is a good bit more powerful and actually more efficient on emulating this game than this system is. With the same size battery, it actually lasts 1.4 times longer. Of course, it also has a smaller LCD screen, so maybe that has something to do with it. But the faster, processor here apparently uses less power to do the same thing, so you get significantly longer battery life for the same size battery on the Odin 2 Mini as you do on the Edge. Now, one thing to point out is normal PS2 emulation, you'll probably get more time than this because this is kind of an extreme game. If I'm playing something like Star Ocean Till the End of Time, which certainly has been featured a lot on this channel, then it's not running the fans as hard, it's not working the system as much. You get more battery life than this. So this is kind of for hard to emulate games. You can expect approximately 2.5 hours. at a reasonably bright brightness setting on the Razer Edge. For light duty stuff, you could expect to get significantly more. But these are the results of the Razer Edge battery test. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. This is a bit shorter than the last one because we just got right to the results. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you have any questions or comments, comment section is already open. And if you want to see more retro gaming, handheld gaming content, please subscribe to the channel. And I will see you next video.